In today's video, we're going to be covering the FPV Magic Board. Now, I've recently designed this about 2 weeks ago, and I just received them in the mail, all thanks to PCBWay. Now, what this board does is three things, actually. It adds filtration to your quadcopter, also allows you to enable and disable your video transmitter, and allows you to connect two cameras at one time. So you can switch between them while you're flying, which is really great, and it's what I'm going to be showing you today. Now, the size of this, just to put this into comparison, it's as big as an F722 microcontroller unit. As you can tell, there it is. This is a 20 by 20 flight controller here. So you can see that it's super freaking tiny. And that was the whole idea here. We could even make it smaller, but since this is a 3-in-1 board, this is as small as I'd highly recommend. Now, if you wanted the schematic files, the open hardware schematic files, and also the PCB files, you can come join my Patreon. My Patreons have access to everything, my open hardware flight controllers. Every single project I do, they have just all the files open for them to modify and do as they please. Not only that, my Patreons also get access to my secret shop, and as well as more than 4 giveaways per month. And if you're a new Patreon, for example, 5 Patreons this month, these 5 will be up for a premium giveaway between just those 5 people. So every month, any new Patreon has a separate giveaway, and I do a total of 4, and you're still eligible for the other giveaways also. So yeah, come join my Patreon. You get a lot of cool things. So let's have a look at this board in its complete form. Now, as you can tell, this is the backside. I've added a really big fat capacitor. This is a 10 microfarad ceramic 50 volt capacitor here, which should do the job for just about anything. It's not going to add that much filtration, but for example, in small toothpicks and everything of that nature, it's going to do pretty good. It's going to help somewhat. So that was the whole idea here. Since the back was basically dead space, I just really wanted to kind of take advantage of it, and this is the best way I came up with. Now, on this side, what we see here, we have 2 ICs. One is an NPN transistor. This is what's going to be in charge of turning on and off your video transmitter through a switch, which I'm going to show you how to do as well. And this IC right here is a Texas Instrument dual analog video switch, which is going to be really great because this is what's going to be enabling us to switch between both channels. And I'm going to be showing you how to set that up with your controller. You're not going to need anything else but your flight controller to do that. Now, also another reason why I chose this IC, which will have the full name, model number, and everything linked down below, is because it will allow you to switch between them with 3.3 volts. And you're like, well, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Well, the microcontroller units on all of these STM32s just output 3.3 volts. So you need something that's compatible, and this is the best setup right here. So in this video, we're actually just going to cover one thing because there's a lot of things to cover. We're going to cover the dual camera switching option here. In the next video, we'll cover the NPN transistor part, which will allow us to turn on and off your video transmitter or anything else that you want to turn on and off. And this capacitor, it doesn't need any coverage. It does its work by itself here. So if you did use one of the order links down below, you can get like 10 of these for absolutely cheap. And it's going to be very hard to focus on this guy because it's so freaking tiny here. And let's go ahead and cover the camera part, the dual camera switching part, which is going to be these 3 pads and these 3 pads. And it's actually very, very simple. For the first pad here, we'll take, for example, camera 1's yellow wire, which is the video signal. And we would set that up right there. Next down the line is going to be ground. So you give it ground from the flight controller to this board. And then the camera 2's yellow video signal is also going to be connected right here. Now we're left with these 3 right here, and these are also pretty simple as well. This is going to be our camera select. So this will end up going, for example, on the buzzer pad or the LED, but I highly recommend you set it up on the LED strip pad. So we're going to install this on this tutorial on the LED, and I'm going to show you how to modify BetaFly in order to have you do that. So this is the camera select, which will go to the LED strip, which I'll cover in a bit. Next one is 5 volts. So it needs 5 volts for the IC to work. So we would have the ground and the 5 volts because this chip takes 5 volts to boot up. And then C out is going to be the camera out. This is going to be a yellow wire that's going straight to your flight controller's camera input, because you have both cameras coming in here, and then, you know, through the chip select, it'll tell it whether to let this camera go through this or let this camera go through here straight to the flight controller. And let's actually take a look at this. So the first thing I recommend you do is you grab all the grounds and you basically connect them together, or you can connect them just to different pads on the flight controller, but it's going to make it really easy this way for this tutorial actually. So I took the ground from this camera, the ground from this camera, which is the black wire, and the ground from the IC here, put them all together and then ran them in just one line, as you can tell right here, right into a ground pad on the flight controller. and that would go right there. So it's very simple. I also did the same thing for the 5V. I took the 5V wire from the FPV Magic board. I took the 5V from here, 5V from here, put all three of them together right here, and just ran it into one wire and gave it 5V right there. So now we're done with the power. So all we need to take note of is the video signals. And like I mentioned before, you're going to take one of the yellow wires here and install it to C1, and then camera 2, take its yellow wire, install it to C2. So what we're left is with these two wires. And what this one is C out. So this is going to be the camera out. So now consider this whole setup here as one camera, and this is the video signal here. And this is going to be the wire that's going to allow us to choose which camera we want to look through. So I'm going to go ahead and take my video signal, which is the C out coming from this board, and I'm going to install exactly where the camera's video input would go on this flight controller right here, which is going to be right there on V input. So wherever your camera's input on any of your flight controllers, that's where this wire is going to go, because that board will decide which camera feed is going to go through to the flight controller. All right, so that's installed into place. Next, I want to grab my, I'm calling it camera select. I called it CX, but it's very difficult to read because this board is so tiny. So camera select, which is this wire right here, is going to go all the way to an LED strip pad. So my LED pad is right there, and I'm going to show you how to configure this in BetaFly so everything runs very smoothly. So now I'm just installing it right there. Just double checking everything. So, all right, everything looks great. So once I show you the BetaFly setup, you're going to be able to switch between the cameras through your RC transmitter with nothing else needed. It's a very simple and straightforward process once you get the hang of it. So once the flight controller is connected via USB, we need to start BetaFly. We are going to be doing something called resource remapping and also using something called pin IO box. So let's go ahead and see how we're going to set these up right here. So we're going to go into the CLI tab. Once we're in the CLI tab, we want to type resources and then press enter. Now we get the complete pinout for the resources here, and what we want to look for is LED strip. Now be careful and don't go to LED, because LED is basically the status LED when you boot up your flight controller. So you don't want to touch this one. You want to go to the LED strip, and we see the LED strip is B06. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and then I'm going to type resource, and we're going to say LED underscore strip. And after the one, we want to go ahead and type none. So once we do that, now the LED strip is no longer functioning as an LED strip. Next, we want to type is resource pin IO. So after we get the resource is freed, we want to type resource pin IO 1. And then we want to paste that number that we did. Mine was B06, yours might be different. And then we press enter, and we should get resource is set to B06. Yours might be different here. Make sure you copy what the LED strip was, as you saw earlier. Now we want to go ahead and type save and then enter. It's going to reboot. And now we go ahead and connect. So like this, what we've done is we've made it into a controllable pin. But next thing we want to do is we want to be able to add it into here, which is in our modes tab. And we're going to set it up as user 1. So it's going to show up in the modes tab as user 1 here. And we're going to go ahead and map that out. So we're going to go again into CLI. As you can tell, we don't have user 1 here throughout. You could keep going through it. You won't see user 1 unless you have one of those special flight controllers. So right now, what we want to do next is we want to go ahead and configure it. So now to configure it as user 1 in our modes tab, these are predefined inside BetaFly. We have user 1 through 4, and we also have some other things as well, but we're not going to cover those because I think I'll make a separate video if it gets enough interest to do that. So we're going to do set pin IO, and we're going to do underscore box, and we're going to say equals, and we're going to give it the number 40. 40 is user 1. So if we set that up, right, just like that, and then we type save, and then now if we go back into our flight controller, we can go to the modes tab, and we can see that we're going to have user 1 here. As you can tell, there it is. So that's really awesome. So now all you'd have to do is add range. So let's just set it up like this. I'm going to go ahead and save it. So for example, right now, as you can tell by default with no RC transmitter, that it's being selected. And once we deselect it just like this and save again, then it simulates like we have flipped the switch, and we can see if the camera actually switches. So I'm going to go ahead and save it just like this, and let's go and hop back into the table and see what happens. All All right guys, so right now everything has power currently, and we're looking through, this is our main camera currently, and once we go switch in the modes tab, we should be able to switch immediately to the other camera here. Later on we'll cover the VTX pit mode part where it actually turns off the video transmitter. So let's go into BetaFly, and as you can tell here, I'm going to simulate as if I flip the switch on my transmitter, as you can tell right there. All right, so now if we've gone ahead and switched it and pretended as if we flip the switch, the camera should change right now. So if I go ahead and save, boom, it switched to this front camera right here. As you can tell, even the OSD realigned itself to the different signal, because one could be NTSC, one could be PAL. And this is the reason why I really like this IC that we've used for the video switching, so we don't have any desyncs going on. And if we switch over again, boom, and we can switch back, which is really nice, really fast, really pleasant switch as well. So there isn't really that much time when it's switching, just immediate switch right there, as you can tell. So it's just really that simple. I mean, you can apply this knowledge also to other things with the pin IO. You can do many things. Also, when you arm, you can have it do something special. But as you can tell right here, it's actually functioning, and it's just pretty awesome because it's a really tiny board, and so you can let your imagination go through with what you can do with this. Toothpicks, micros, you know, even large airplanes. Can you imagine how this is the smallest board that has camera switching, unlike the other 20x20s that have that inbuilt. But if you don't have that inbuilt, this could be a very useful thing, even for smart home devices, anything of that nature. So it's a really practical tool for a lot of things. And well, that's going to conclude it for this video, guys. Everything is linked down below in detail if you want to know how to order these. If you also join my Patreon, you can access the open source files. So with one click, it opens up. You can modify as you please, change the color, make it smaller, remove some stuff. So you'll be able to do all of these things, which is going to be really great. And well, that's it, guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. And a huge shout out to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out, guys.